for the past 30 or so years, well, probably 40 really, it's been evident that there has been an increasing growth of what I'm just going to call the corporatocracy, which is international mega businesses in which you are just a functional cog in a machine. And everyone knows that this is the part of life where the rat race that you were essentially trying to escape. And when I was young, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, you got many, many films representing this. And it was evident to the Gen Xers that actually the future was looking boring, really spiritually devoid, really uninspiring, and it wasn't going to be somewhere you really wanted to be, but it made you comfortable. As Edward Norton's character in Fight Club lamented, he would have to go and do a job he hated every day, and then he'd sit on his fancy furniture and watch rubbish TV until he just did it again the next day. And this is a basic theme for many of the really big and influential cultural touchstones of my generation. And there was a kind of despondency in it, a kind of despair. And that's why you wanted to join the Fight Club. That's why you went to eat gruel in Zion with Morpheus, right? It's like, okay, that sucks on a physical level. There's hardship, but at least there's spiritual fulfillment. You know why you're doing this thing.
Well, it provides a struggle, which is something that the modern world tries desperately to prevent from people having. It wants to make people as comfortable as possible. Yep. The problem is that if you're as comfortable as possible, you may as well be dead.
Well, that's the lament of Blade Runner, isn't it? It's that the androids were made to be heavy labour simulacra of human beings, and the human beings in living in a corporate dystopia have lost their humanity, but the androids are attempting to do some sort of existential revolution to ensure that they get longer lifespans and they can see incredibly beautiful feats like starships on fire and entire galaxies and be remembered. And it's that the cruelty is that the human beings have been rendered these agents of the state to hunt down these few people with the last spark of human divinity in them, and that's why Decker tries to leave it. It's about leaving the corporate dystopia.
Yeah, and so the Gen X position is, well, we're going to have no meaning in our lives, and so we're going to have to try and find meaning in some way, but at least we will be able to work, make some money, buy a house, get married, do whatever. The future was boring, but it wasn't bleak, and the dystopia was kind of abstract. It's like, yeah, okay, it's going to be, I'm going to be in the mouse utopia, and that's going to be kind of depressing, but it's not a crushing sense of failure, inevitability, and a black hole in which nothing will ever come out of. Right?
The prospect of retirement was in reach after you'd done your 40 years in the rat race.
Exactly. It's not that there was nothing that you could gain out of this. This system you could make it pay off for you. It was just going to be insanely depressing to do it, right? But you could look at it and go, okay, I have a plan. It's going to take 40 years, but I have a plan, and fine. And the millennials didn't take that approach to corporations. They didn't like the kind of resignation and inevitability that the Gen Xers took towards corporations, and decided, no, what we're going to do is essentially grab hold of these corporations and make them moral. Because the Gen Xers never felt that corporations could be used in a moral way.
Which just meant make them gay race communists.
Yes, that's exactly what it meant, right? That's why all of these corporations, as soon as millennials started entering the workforce and making demands on, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, of course we can agree to gay race communism because, frankly, it's not going to attack our bottom line. But, of course, as soon as it starts attacking the bottom line, then actually we're not going to listen to that so much. But then you've got the Zoomers. Especially the younger Zoomers. I think the older Zoomers aren't doing too badly, but the younger Zoomers, I think, are looking at the world. They've just finished university. They're looking at the world and going, okay, why am I here? What prospects do I have? And I think this is one of the issues that underpins Luigi Mangione's
Italiano
assassination of Brian Thompson. Because in them, I think there is a kind of symbolic representation of the past and the future coming into conflict. And it's not like they haven't seen this coming, right? So, as you may not know, because this has only been really reported in left-wing media, United Health aren't exactly a very nice company. They provide a huge amount of healthcare in the United States, and of course, it's a private corporation. And ProPublica got leaked documents that outline the company's strategic playbook for withholding treatment to, in this case, autistic children, because it's going to save them money.
Hang on. So, look, I'm very suspicious of this just because the narrative is often that every single health insurance company should take on all the claims, no matter the...
I'm not.
I know you're not. But then, as for the kids with autism claim, again, massive sympathies to the family that actually have it. I have seen recently, in places like Minnesota with a large Somali community, them exploiting the my child has autism, ADHD, etc. claims in order to get more state assistance and health insurance stuff.
The problem with this is that in the leaked document, United Health accept the legitimacy of the complaints.
Okay.
Right. So they say, there's a real problem with these kids. They do need medical treatment for their autism. And when we say autism, we mean someone who is not very socially adept. They give examples of children who literally can't speak and who are like just wildly out of control and actually need medication to just bring their behavior into line with what is normal. So it's... I agree with you that there are massive problems with exploitation.
But in this case...
But in this case, it seems that they are also... you do have, like, the exploitive thing, but you also have the Gordon Gekko types who are like, look, we're losing money on this, and we need to make sure that we keep our profits up. And that is a genuine concern and problem that the system is simply not set up to deal with well. Right. This is something, I mean, for example, in the case of autism, in fact, it's in the past 2 decades, autism has increased from 1 in 150 children to 1 in 36. And so United Health are pursuing market-specific action plans to limit access to this treatment because it's just going to cost them too much money.
I think they've also seen the direction that state regulation was going in. This might change under the Trump administration, but especially after the Obamacare individual mandate, which penalized you if you didn't want to use the state-allocated healthcare options. They're seeing the state is swallowing this up and regulating it and growing, so they're thinking, oh, it's okay, the government will just take care of that, so we don't need to snap that up.
Yes, indeed. And one of the things that the sort of politically aware Zoomers are thinking are, well, okay, I may not know the details of all of that. I may not know how all of this all connects together with all the other things, but I do see that this company makes $22 billion a year in net profits. And then they're essentially squeezing the people who do need, and again, they admit that they need these medications, and squeezing them to withhold it as much as possible. So the corporation looks like a giant evil vampiric entity. And this is why Brian Thompson was worried about his company's negative image. Before he was shot, in fact in 2024, Brian Thompson had an early warning for his colleagues. The company has a public relations problem. Yeah, no kidding. Because you look like a giant evil vampiric corporation. Average Americans didn't understand the massive insurance company's role in the nation's health system, he argued. Again, that's true. They don't understand, but they see you're making $22 billion in profit. He argued in internal discussions with fellow executives that the steps it had taken to limit out-of-pocket costs for life-saving drugs, and instead, United Healthcare and its parent group had faced investigations and congressional probes, simmering consumer anger over charges, and it was making billions by denying healthcare to the ill and elderly. Quote, he understood that the public was frustrated with what they perceived the company's actions to be. According to one of the people who spoke with Thompson, he was actively articulating a vision that helped better educate and help people better understand what the company was doing. The problem is, it's a difficult sell if someone you know has a genuine condition and is being denied treatment by this company.
Again, this company might well have disreputable actions, but the framing of this does annoy me. When it said they're making billions by denying healthcare from the elderly and vulnerable. So, no, they're not. They don't start with a giant pot of gold and then accumulate more gold just because they're not giving treatment. By giving treatment, they're making the money. So they're being selective.
Remember, people pay health insurance.
Yes.
So the pot of gold is there, and that's meant to be used to provide treatment for someone when they need it.
Yes.
And so the incentive for the health companies and the insurance companies is to refuse to pay out when it's needed in order to retain as much of that as possible.
I think that they're refusing to cover people when they apply for the pre-existing condition, not refusing to cover an issue that arises once they've already got the insurance.
Well, it's not one or the other.
Well, it is, because so if you got into a motorcycle accident, for example, that's not a pre-existing condition.
Sure.
But a child with autism, if you're trying to get healthcare coverage, they wouldn't apply that because that's
but
at the application stage.
But the thing is, there are going to be millions of different claims, right? That are for various different reasons, various different circumstances, and what they're trying to do is just generally overall lower. And so some things will go through, some things won't. But the general sort of contraction of the availability of the care is caused by the perverse incentive of the fact that they want to make billions in profits for shareholders, and that actually does mean that people are denied the medical coverage that they need, the medical care that they need. And so there's a genuine understanding, and I think it's not irrational, that, well, we're kind of at war with the healthcare providers, right? They are essentially in some way disincentivized from actually helping us and Luigi Mangione himself was injured and needed healthcare, right? He needed these things. And so he is someone who is directly affected by these things. Not that I'm trying to in any way justify what he's done or anything like that. Of course, do not commit murder. I shouldn't have to say that. But the point is, there are perverse incentives in privatized healthcare. And I'm not saying, like Kyle Kalinske style, oh, well, then we just need an NHS and everything we go. No, there are massive perverse incentives in state-controlled healthcare as well. It's something that we just don't have a solution for, and I'm not saying I have a solution for it. What I'm saying is the reality on the ground is that there are people who are suffering, and they perceive fat cats who are profiting from their suffering. And this, whether you agree with them or not, is their perception. And also, if you're it's not like Mangione was an ill-educated dunce or something like that. He was a highly educated tech guy. So he knew he was a smart guy, and these are the perceptions that the young people coming out of the universities now are looking at the world around them going, right, so I'm going to have a very difficult time to get into that position. I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to spend a lot of time in the grind on the way, and I can see the fat cat right there essentially tyrannizing me through the use of the system, through the corporatocracy. And so it doesn't even matter whether you agree with that or not. That's basically what they think. And I don't think it's an irrational perception either, right? And I think that's why Brian Thompson was like, look, I am actually a bit worried about the way this is going. And so when polled, a recent poll from Emerson College Polls found that 4 in 10 people between 18 and 29 basically thought that was fine, because they find themselves at the bottom of a system that doesn't seem to be intent on helping them, and it seems to, in fact, intent on preventing them gaining access to things that other countries purportedly say are universal for everyone in those countries, and therefore think, well, this guy was essentially an oppressor, and it's fine to shoot him. Now, like I said, I don't agree. Shouldn't kill anyone. But the point is, when nearly half of a cohort in a country is like, yeah, no, that's totally fine, and in fact I support it and I've been cheering it on, that's a real civilizational problem. That's the system having a massive issue and not doing as people think it should do. So yeah, 41% of people thought it was somewhat or just completely acceptable shoot the CEO in Manhattan when he was wandering around. 23% of those in their 30s thought it should be acceptable, and only 13% of those in their 40s found it acceptable. So the millennials, a third of them were nearly like, well, oh, yeah, that's what they get. And that's just a cohort that's getting bigger, where it's like, look, we can see that there is wealth and access pooling unjustly at one side or at the top, and this is making the lives of the people on the bottom worse. Well, that's why you get the increased cohort there. The point, I think, that underpins it really is that the corporate structure of America is not upholding any kind of noblesse oblige, right? The CEOs of these companies should be making examples out of particular problem cases and saying, yeah, no, I'm a multimillionaire CEO. That person has, got some terrible congenital illness and for some reason they can't get it treated, I'm going to, as a really nice big show of good faith, I'm going to pay $500,000 or whatever, and I'm going to get that person fixed. Big
philanthropic ventures, basically.
Exactly. There's no philanthropy from these people, and so there's a massive moral disconnect. They don't feel like they're part of the same civilization. In fact, they feel exploited and suppressed, and as if this is never going to get any better. And that's why you get someone like this guy just shooting one in the street, and then nearly half of Zoomers going, "Yay, brilliant, love it, want to see more of it." And it's like that's a crazy problem to have, and it's not getting any better, as you can see by what are the sort of Generation Alphas going to be like when they have it even worse? The prospects of that generation are even worse than the prospects of the Zoomers. I mean, it's going to be more than half. They're like, yeah, no, just start shooting CEOs. We don't care because we hate them because we have nothing. We will never get a house. We will never have a family. We'll never have any of the things they have, and they have it all, and we don't care. Unfortunately, the left have a point when it comes to inequality. It matters whether it's fair or not. Whether mechanically the inequality, the creation of the inequality was fair or not, isn't really the problem or the concern of people of his age. They don't care. They've got to the point where it's like, okay, well, there's no future for me, so I may as well do crazy things.
Was it Bernie Goetz, if I remember the name correctly, the guy who became a vigilante in New York City when crime reached a peak, and it inspired Death Wish and then Joker? Well, I remember there was a vigilante in New York who shot a few criminals, and public opinion was overwhelmingly on his side.
Oh, this was the subway shooting, wasn't it?
I'm not familiar, but that doesn't surprise me.
This sounds like similar conditions where perceived social conditions deteriorate to the extent of where people will turn to vigilante figures if they don't think that the state is acting in their best interest.
Yes, and that's precisely what has happened here. So the BBC are like, oh, well, this is a bit of a concern, isn't it? Lots of people are pro-Mangione. Lots of them. And, I mean, obviously, a small number of people turn out in public, but lots of people on social media and when polled are actually like, yeah, no, this guy's a hero. They view him as a kind of Robin Hood figure rather than someone who has just murdered a person in cold blood. And what I'm saying is when the system starts producing this, the system has entered into a kind of it's one of two ways, actually. It either enters into a death spiral or it clamps down and becomes very, very tyrannical.
Did you see, what was it, Peter Thiel on Piers Morgan, I think it was, being asked about it and
No, I didn't, actually.
Struggling to give an answer when Piers asked him, how do you feel about this? What do you think about the people who think it's acceptable to shoot multi-billionaire CEOs in public? And he just had no answer for it.
What could he answer? Yeah, given his position.
He genuinely seemed frightened by the question.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them are frightened. And this is... We'll get to that in a minute, actually, right? So, basically, the public have responded really poorly to his arrest and to everyone. I mean, for the police department that arrested him started getting death threats. Like, the McDonald's workers who turned him in started getting death threats. Like, the... Etsy has been flooded with pro-Mangione apparel, whereas Amazon are constantly pulling these things from their site. They're like, no, we can't have you glorifying a murderer, especially directly in the wake of the murder. We can't have that, and this is a major problem. There is a huge public upswell of sympathy for him for this reason. I'm not even getting to the women who are just,
Well, but not just that. There was a woman in Florida who I believe has been arrested because Luigi carved a message on the 3 bullets, and she relayed the same message that were on the bullets to her own healthcare provider.
Well, right. So this is another thing. So I'm not going through individual cases of people who have been struggling with this company in particular, because of problems that they have, and it seems that Luigi had exactly this problem, problems they had, and their reactions to it. I mean, there's a one Jen Coffey who's mentioned in this article who's been fighting to get UHC to cover her medical bills for whatever reason, and she was like, well, I think it's terrible, I condemn violence, but I'm not shocked. Because who wants to be trapped in a years-long legal wrangle over getting whatever problem you've got solved with this medical company who's got every incentive to just have their paid lawyers to just tie you up as long as possible, right? Who wants that? That's not good. That doesn't help anything. And so what people are saying is, look, this has been coming for a while. This system is not serving the people who are at the bottom of it, and the young people who are at the bottom feel there's no world ahead other than to be a suffering cog in the machine of the corporatocracy while other people benefit. And why would you want that? That's a terrible social contract to be putting in front of someone and saying, right, okay, so you're going to be paying for Brian Thompson's new yachts while you suffer, and that's how it is forever, so get used to it.
So you're predicting, unfortunately, a large number of Nicholas 30 uns.
I'm not predicting anything. I'm trying to give a warning, say,
Yes.
this is going to get worse,
If
not
things don't
better.
change.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Unless something structural changes, and just again with the Peter Thiel, what's your answer to this? Nothing. Of course, nothing. What can he say? He's essentially got to say, well, I need to start being more charitable. I need to start.
I think in Thiel's case, he's on side.
Yeah, I like Thiel.
Yes, but
he
he
is-
is part of a cohort that will be targeted no matter his personal philanthropic ventures.
Exactly. On a personal level, I like Thiel, but like he's benefiting from the system that is causing these problems, and so okay. Anyway, Mangione is getting a terrorism charge, and the thing is, that's probably not inappropriate.
Yeah.
Like this is a political killing that's designed to cause political change. So anyway, the corporatocracy is of course going to come down as hard on him as they can, but a failure to understand why this has happened means that it's going to persist and get worse. And Reuters in this point out, look, Americans pay more for healthcare than any other country, with spending on insurance premiums and out-of-pocket payments, blah, blah, being the highest in the world. Now, Americans make the most money in the world, so you would expect healthcare to reflect that. The spending on healthcare is more than everyone else because it makes so much money. But the thing is, there comes to a point where it just doesn't seem to matter how much money you put into healthcare. So I saw a chart the other day, in fact, where it showed the amount of money put into healthcare correlated with life expectancy. And after a certain point, there's just no life expectancy increase. And so it looks to people who are looking at this like actually this is a form of extraction rather than healthcare.
Well, particularly when they're not looking after the health of Americans, they're merely responding to the arising of ailments which often come from their diets and the like, which has been introduced because of state lobbying by other large pharmaceutical and agricultural bodies.
And so, like I said, I'm completely against any kind of arbitrary extrajudiciary murders, obviously. This is not getting any better, though, and Mangione, the harder they come down on him, and they should come down hard on him, but that's going to have a consequence of making him into the folk hero that they probably shouldn't be trying to create, right? Obviously, they have to come down on him on this, but this is not going to make him less popular with the people who are incredibly resentful against the system itself. And I thought it might be worth just pointing out that they know that the danger is coming, right? Like, this is from November. This is from before the shooting in Business Insider, and you can see that CEOs are worried about security. They're clamoring for bodyguards as the world feels more dangerous. So one security expert they asked, they said, well, we've got wars going on, elections, protests, social challenges, immigration challenges. It all creates the need for additional security. So it could be that the outcome of this is essentially the cyberpunk dystopia, where the giant corporations have got to essentially employ a kind of private army to protect themselves from the public, from the underclass.
There's an interesting point here as well, related to other political movements. This chap speaking to Business Insider says to the FT that businesses linked to Israel and the defence and energy industries are most likely to hire extra security for their staff because of the salience of the pro-Palestine protests. So,
absolutely. And Mangione and Thompson are going to provide a direct incentives for CEOs to require, I mean, if you're a billionaire, well, okay, I'm just going to triple, quadruple my security detail. I'm just going to have loads of armed guards around me at all times, because why wouldn't I spend the money on that? And so now I'm entrenching in my position. But not only that, the idea that I have an obligation to the public, no, I'm rendering the public as a danger, right? I don't have an obligation to them. They're the threat to me that I have to prevent. And so now you've got an even wider and deeper rift between the people at the top of society and the people at the bottom, which is not exactly going to mollify the concerns of the people at the bottom. You know, what are you going to come out and say is, well, look, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that poor people are happy and healthy and prosperous, but also I need all these armed guards to protect me from you evil paws. It's like, sorry, the actions don't fit the words. It's going to become an irreconcilable rift.
But if you work in security, as it pointed out there, it might be some good money.
Oh yeah, this is golden era for personal security. And of course, since the shooting, everyone is like, oh God, we're going to need security. So they know. They've been worried about this for some time. Brian Thompson himself was warning, look, our PR is pretty poor. We can either stop being evil or we can start making people like us. I mean, they could harmonize, but they know. They absolutely know. And so Amazon...
Sorry, did you say that they could harmonize? We could be evil and make people like us?
No, we could stop being evil and then people would like us.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, you know...
I misheard you.
Yeah.
Jeez.
You're like a spokesperson for the Republican Party in The Simpsons.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, you know, Amazon, various other companies, they all know, oh God, okay, this is going to get difficult, right? Because, I mean, is it beyond the realms of possibility that disgruntled Amazon employee who was sick of being monitored by, like, you know, the AI that's watching every second of his movements down to like the 10-second block, is he? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, right?
Like Michael Douglas and falling down.
Exactly, right. And this is something Dan covered on the Lotus video, because 10 years ago there was an article about by a tech billionaire. It's like, look, the pitchforks are coming. Like, people aren't going to live like this forever, and this is essentially, we're waiting for the generation to be the whichever generation it is that is just so despondent at the future that they're just like, well, I would rather go to jail and face these crimes and take revenge on these people than carry on like this forever, right? Where my generation, it wasn't that bad, so we were like, okay, we'll just drudge through it. Okay, the millennials had to kind of cope. Oh, we'll make the corporations good, bro. We'll make them moral. And Gen Z are like, okay, no, you tried that, doesn't work. You know, I can't do what you did. You tried making them good, that didn't work, and so now what?
It turns out putting the Pride flag every Pride month on the Twitter account
Didn't fix it.
Didn't do it. Sorry, millennials, we know you tried.
Yeah, it was a noble attempt, and honestly, in a way, it is kind of noble. It's like, look, we're going to try and make them good. It's like, okay, but you're evil, but whatever.
Naughty Dog can make as many ugly female characters as they want. It doesn't make the games any better.
I know, but the point being that there has to be some kind of structural institutional change, or else we are genuinely heading for the cyberpunk dystopia. So,
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can see Harry become the James O'Brien Whisperer, get into the mind of a left-wing broadcaster, and if you want to see all the other things that we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.